Welcome everyone to the Talking Stox Zoom debate. This is the BriSCA F1 top 10s, and in this particular episode we're going to be doing the BriSCA F1 top 10 tracks of all time, and that can be because it's a personal favourite. It doesn't have to be the greatest facilities. A lot of these on this particular episode aren't, as you'll see, but they're just great tracks for great racing, memorable moments, etc. So and as always, with me, Neil Randon, I'm joined by Ian Higgins and Colin Casserley. And so no time to lose. We ought to get straight on with it. So we'll do part one will be the top 10th track down to our 6th best. And then part two, which will come later, we'll do the 5th best down to our favourite or the best track of all time, in our personal opinion. Okay, so I shall go first. And my first track is going to be not one that people would regard as being the best for facilities, that's for sure, but it is Crewe. And the reason why I've gone for Crewe is because it was just a wonderful venue for action. The track itself wasn't exactly the best, as you can see here. The facilities in the background, you can see Dave Tapping here pointing skywards on one of the bends. I'm not sure which bend that was. I think it might have been turn 1 or 2.
Turn 2.
Yeah, turn 2 in there. Yeah, that's probably the best the facilities were actually at Crewe. I mean, it was a dump really, but it didn't matter because the racing there was fantastic. The track was big and fast. We had some great racing, and it's one of those places where after the racing had finished, when you went back to your car, you probably couldn't find it because it was covered completely in shale and it looked like all the other cars in the car park. It was just that sort of place. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter that the facilities were basic. It was the racing that you went there for, and it was always exceptional, really, always. As I know Ian will agree on some occasions, but yeah, brilliant place.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Fast, unpredictable, and one of my fondest memories from there, not winning the semi-final, was actually watching Nigel Walton go around in the Rever. Literally 2 inches off the fence, foot flat out, flat down. You just thought he's got some kahunas to do that, and he was brilliant, along with Dave Beresford, another Crewe specialist. Just to drive at, I loved it, but to spectate at, I also loved it. You were close to that fence. Unfortunately, there was an incident where Andy Clark went over the fence and landed in the crowd on the start-finish straight.
I remember that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but for action, action and speed, brilliant place.
Yeah.
It was
Colin?
Well, it was a diehards track, wasn't it? Yeah. If you loved stock car racing, you went there despite the facilities because you knew you were going to get some good racing, plenty of action, and like I say, it was fast and you're pretty darn close to it. And you probably wouldn't want to take a newbie along.
No, as I did once. I took someone along who'd never been stock car racing before, but because I was so passionate about the place, and it was also a meeting when he absolutely chucked it down with rain as well. It was a diabolical night, really. You nowhere to get cover. You got covered in shale and mud. And like I say, I took this mate of mine along who was more into horse racing and going to Newmarket and Ascot and going to Crewe on a Saturday night. But I took him along regardless. And as a result, he never went again. But it was not surprised really. But it was just I just so enjoyed it there. So I wanted everybody else to as well. But they didn't have the same mindset as I did. But never mind. Yeah. So that was my number 10. My number 9 is from one extreme to the other. You could say was, if I can find the track. There it is, and it was Wembley. Now Wembley only had 2 meetings, and we've had about, I think in the UK, got about 93 venues we could have picked from for our top 10, and if you include the Dutch tracks as well, well over 100 really. So the fact that we actually, so I suppose in a way it's no surprise we actually did get to Wembley in the end, but it was still a thrill to go to Wembley Stadium to watch stock cars go around that track. I mean, as you see here, we've got Brian Wignall. This is 1974. Brian Wignall put upside down on the hallowed turf with someone running towards him and looking in a bit of blind panic because he's, it was not the done thing digging up the track at Wembley. I mean, it's bad enough at Bradford, but to do it at Wembley was just not the done thing. But it was just an exciting event to go to. With, like I said, the two meetings. The first one on the Saturday night was we had there was a guy who was the compare.
Noel Edmonds.
Noel Edmonds, sorry, yeah. Forgot his name again. Noel Edmonds was the compare there, and he was, that made it gave it a bit of razzmatazz. Stuart Smith took part in the Champions of Champions race, so they all took part in these four Mexicos. Denny Hume and Roger Clark and a few other famous names from that era, and Stuart won the race, and and that was interesting in the fact that many years later at Coventry I actually went and interviewed him because Autosport for the first time ever wanted stock cars in their magazine. They were interested in this particular event because I think it was the anniversary of him winning it. So yeah, it was one of the last interviews that was done with Stuart, probably before he sadly passed away later that year. But it was just a memorable place. I know, like I say, the second meeting was on a Sunday afternoon. It hosted the BriSCA F2 World Final. Can't even remember who won that, to be honest, but I should have researched it really.
Dave Brown, I think.
Was it?
I think it
might have been. Yeah, but it was great because we had F2s and F1s. I think Stuart Smith won the second final. The first one was won by Don Evans, number 37. I mean, obviously, as everybody knows, the first meeting didn't go without his hitches here and there. It didn't go smoothly compared to the second one. But overall, just the fact that they had stock cars at Wembley was just made it for me. What about you, Colin?
Well, I have kind of different views a little bit on Wembley. It is fantastic that the stock car actually got to Wembley in the first place. But my memories of the first meeting is it was a bit chaotic. That Ford Mexico Challenge did overrun a little bit.
Yeah.
When the F1s come out on the track, it looked a bit narrow, and I think they were a bit worried about the cars going on the pitch. So the heats were, few drivers were locked out of the heats. The consolation, a few drivers were locked out, including Dave Chisholm. For the second meeting, as though it was our closest track, it's only about 20 miles from home, something like that. My brother applied for a booking and was refused. Probably he's a little old white top who might have threatened the turf, I guess. But so he was refused the booking. But there was a clashing meeting at Aycliffe that day, so my brother and my dad decided, sod it, if they won't give us a booking there, we're going to go and race at Aycliffe, despite it being about 6 or 7 hours away in those days. And we left on the Saturday because it took so damn long to get there. Got to Aycliffe, we were the first ones there.
So you got there on a Monday.
We got there even earlier. We got too early for the pub on the corner to open, so that's how early we got there.
Right.
And we parked in the pits, and the second driver coming in was Dave Chisholm. And we said to Dave, "What the hell are you doing here?" He goes, "I got locked out in a bloody consolation or a race at Wembley."
There was a consolation.
I'm not going to go back there. And so both of us, out of principle, decided to go 250 miles from home rather than going 10, 15, 20 miles down the road.
Amazing.
But Wembley should have been a spectacle, and everybody in stock car racing, whether it was BriSCA, Speedworth, whoever, should have closed down that day and got as big a crowd as they possibly could have done to promote Wembley in front of what would probably been the press would have been involved as well, stuff like that. So it was an occasion to try and get stock cars into the sort of mainstream view of people, but I think they missed a trick there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it did get in the papers. I remember, I think some of the nationals featured it as a build-up. I think build-up to towards the event. But like I said, they didn't really probably take advantage of it as much as they much as they should have done really. But it was, yeah, it was just. But look at that, Wembley Stadium, the place where England won the World Cup final in '66, and there we are, not that many years later, to be honest. Or was it? No, I mean '66. It was only 8 years later, and we're there to watch stock cars. It was just amazing, really. I mean, it was just not unheard of. That's what made it special.
Yeah, it's fantastic, fantastic event for them to do it. It was fair play to Trevor Edmond. I think he might have been the speedway for most of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think he might have been.
He may have had a little bit of an influence that way, but to actually get stock cars at Wembley was a fantastic achievement.
Yeah. You it was before your time, wasn't it, Ian?
A couple of years before I sort of got involved. I was watching banger racing at Sunnyvale back then, so
right.
no, it was before my time, but and it would have been a long way. But having said that, Dennis would have probably driven down there if we were into the job at the time. So, but no, one that I can't really comment on.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, from my 9th track of all time to my 8th, which is Kings Lynn, the current track. Basically, just because I loved the place as soon as I ventured there, which was during that period when we had the Skegness. Well, I had Skegness Boston double headers originally, and I think they started doing the Skegness Kings Lynn double headers on the same day, on a Sunday. Skegness in the afternoon and Kings Lynn in the evening. God, I don't understand why we can't do that again, to be honest. I think that'd be really good. Get 2 meetings on the same day, like they used to back then. And it's just a fantastic track, fantastic surface, always a spectacle on that back straight stand, which is where I tend to watch. It's just brilliant through there. The noise, the speed, and you're close to the track. We've had some great races there in the past. Famous one as well when Mick Sauder did the wall of death round the fence.
10 years ahead of that NASCAR guy.
Indeed, and that's interesting. And I was at the gala meeting at Skegness, and Speaky did the same thing. He did the same thing on that night. So that was after the NASCAR guy did it. But he was ahead of his time, old Mick, wasn't he, with that? But they banned him from doing it because he was getting, he was making a habit of trying to do that, and you got disqualified if you do that anymore. So, which is a shame, I think, because mind you can't have every car going around the fence like that. It'd be bloody ridiculous. But yeah, what a brilliant track. Like I said, we've had some great world finals. One that Stuart Smith Jr. won when he, that was a mega event. So that's why it's in my list. Don't know. What about you guys? You're fans of Kings Lynn?
Yeah, I like Kings Lynn. There's been some darn good races there. Like I say, the World Final has been good. And who can forget that mini race? I think it was the same night as the first Formula One World Final there. I think also just one of the best mini races I've ever seen. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. But it's the track's well prepared. Facilities keep making improvements to it. And like I say, if you stand on that back straight, you're so close to the cars, you feel them, and you get the sense of speed, and that's a plus. And the Formula Ones especially is not just about the actual cars going around, but it's the sense of the speed, the noise, and everything around it, and you get it at Kings Lynn.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Ian?
Yeah, it's a superb venue. The track's always been good. As a driver, I preferred it. I liked it post and wire, to be honest. You had to work a little bit harder. You couldn't do a mix order back then. That's for sure.
No, absolutely not. No, exactly.
But in all honesty, the past couple of years, I haven't, apart from World Finals, I haven't had a chance to watch a meeting there because we tend to clash with our racing. We've had the karts around there a couple of times. They were brilliant. You can't fault them, Buster, for the investment and everything. And, at the end of the day, it's one of, stock cars, top tracks. There's no two ways about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's where Dave Chisholm made his first appearance in an F1.
Was it? That's right.
Yeah.
Was it a Chick Woodruff invited him? Wasn't that right? I think I wrote about that in Heavy Metal, actually.
I think Chick used to promote there. And when I think the first meeting I went to was on a Sunday afternoon back in the 60s, I think it was. and the track was in the middle of nowhere. Then there was no industrial estate, and I think there's just Formula 2s were running there, and it may have been a bit short of cars. And Chick had got his F1 in the pits, and he invited Dave to a match race, and Dave whooped his ass, I think. And
He did. He did.
And Chick said, I better retire from this and give you the car.
That's right. That's right. Well, he borrowed it a few times after that, didn't he? But yeah, that's right. Because he, they had quite a good working relationship. Those two guys, didn't they? Chick and Dave. They worked closely together. I remember that because Chizzy told me that story when I was writing heavy metal. It was a great story about the fact he did like to recount the fact that he was quicker than him and they'd never sat in the car before. Yeah, excellent stuff. Yeah, so that's my number 8. My number 7 is a track that I've actually regrettably never went to, but it has to be in my top 10 just because of the stories that have come out of the place and just the fact that it's unlike any other stock car track in Europe, and that is, I shall get the track up. There's a picture of an incident. Sorry, I'll get there in the end. I'll just scroll the wrong way to get the picture. Is this place, and we can't really tell from that picture particularly, but it's Barlow. I've put that in. I'm like I say, I've never been. I never went. It's one of the biggest regrets of my stock car racing watching life is never having got to Barlow to see them hurtling around that place. I mean, it's just the stories that came out of it. I mean, particularly that excuse me, that one that first Skoda, that first long track world final that Skoda boys took on the Barlow locals and basically did a number on them on the track. It was one of the greatest stories, one of the great races, really. And it helped make the book that I wrote, heavy metal. I wrote a whole chapter on that. It was just that was a fantastic event, really.
In my recollection of racing, that has to be one of the best weekends of stock car racing.
Yes,
and we haven't got very long on here. I could talk all night about that meeting. Those days, it was just unbelievable. What happened on the track, what happened off the track, what happened in the bars in the nights, and I think that's what made Barlow so special. Not just what happened on the track, but the whole social side of it, and it was so different. It was so different.
Yeah. One of your favourites,
the actual racing side was a byproduct for us on the weekends. I mean, I raced out there 10 years, and it was all about the ferry across, full of stock car people, getting to Venlo, full of stock car people, getting the long bar, full of stock car people. The story, well, what happened in Barlow has to stay in Barlow, but it's fantastic, just such a fantastic few days. Really, brilliant.
What a tragic, it is a tragic shame that it's no longer here. We don't, it would go on forever, that place. And I think the atmosphere would stay the same forever. It's just conjured up that, particularly those long track world final meetings, I should imagine, just really, really special weekends. I just wish I'd have gone. But the stories are just fascinating to hear anyway. So, what a brilliant place. And as I think one of the first top 10s we did, I showed the Stuart Smith hit, and one of the biggest hits of all time down that back straight. Oh dear me, what a hit that was. Yeah, so unbelievable. That's funny. I'm sure someone else was going to bring up Barlow. I've got another car. One of Colin's favourite wacky cars is going to appear. I don't know if it's what. I just found it. I thought I've got to put this in here. There's another one of those. But anyway, so that's my number 7. And number 6 is another track that's closed. Sadly, there's many others that have. Again, funny enough, I struggle to find pictures. But I got a few in the end. If I can just bear with me a second, I shall find the photo of this particular track. I've mentioned it already, which is Boston. I'll put Boston in. It's just Boston, as you can see here, was an action track when it arrived. It sort of burst onto the scene, to coin a phrase, when it first appeared. It only had a short shelf life, really. I mean, because when they first started racing there, because it was more of an F2 track, started racing there. I remember I think it might have been one of the first meetings, and it just blew me away. Again, standing along the back straight, you're so close to the action. In those days, the cars were unsilenced as well, and they thundered past, and you were inches away, almost brushing past you. I mean, I think one, can't remember, it was actually smacked through the fence, and the bumper ended up almost near where the crowd were at one point. It's just madness, really. But what a brilliant place to watch racing. I remember the one of the finals I saw there, Lundy one. There's only about 3 finished, I think. Roger Warnes was leading. There'd been a big pile-up halfway through the race, wiped out half the field, and Roger Warnes was leading until probably the last bend, and Lundy caught him and took him out. And I think Jeff Nichols might have finished third that day. It's only about three finished, and then he came out in the Grand National on this magnificent race between him, Peter Folding, and Dave Beresford. I'll never forget it. From the one lap handicap, and he caught them up and passed both of them, and Peter retaliated, and it was just magnificent racing between all three of them. A flat chat came all the way around. One of those events you never forget. And also remember, I broke down on the way home, and I had to get recovery lorry to come and get me. I got home about 4 or 5 in the morning, I think. But it really was worth it. I used to go every time Boston was on. I was pretty much there every meeting. Just loved the place.
It was a good place, and the double headers, Skeggy and then Boston, the mad rush to the chip shop to get there before everybody else, and then on to Boston. Just again, it was the atmosphere, the atmosphere, the whole thing, the whole day, and it was an action track. And like I say, you were close to it. You were close to it.
Yeah, you can see a mentor, really. But what about, did you race there at all, Ian?
Oh yeah, I raced there quite a bit. Murray Harrison put me through the wires there once. In fact, I can't remember what year it was, but we'd done Skeggy in the afternoon, and I'd won heat and final, and then we went there on the evening. I won the heat as well, no, I loved it. When I think it. I can't remember what year it was, but I had the car that we called the QM System 4000 car. And coming out of turn 2 there, I got turned right and went straight through the fence, knocked all that white board away behind and shattered it, covered everybody with splinters.
I reckon I was there that day. I must have seen that. Must have got some of that.
Brilliant. And then you talk about the going from Skeggy to from Skegness across there. Well, we used to change the gear set in the car because we only ran the one car. So the lads would be in the back of the bus doing the gearbox and everything, taking the back of the gearbox out, changing gears as we're driving down the road, which weren't so bad. Old man Wayman had his mechanic laid on the trailer under the car, in the prop shaft, driving down the road.
No. What unbelievable.
So, but like you said, that afternoon and then evening, it was brilliant. Just such a good little track, tight, hard. It was good. Bobby Burns, I used to love watching around there.
Yeah, he was good around there.
He was good. Matt Bennett was another. So it's a good track.
Bennett, that's memorable days. Like I said, just having 2 meetings on the same day. Skeggy and then go down there for that blast round there. It was just, they were special days. Those double header meetings, and Boston was one of the highlights for me. So that's my 10 down to 6. So we shall now swap over to Colin. I think we'll have Colin next for his 10th down to 6.
My 10th is Rochdale.
Oh,
I suppose you can say it's a bit like Crewe. It was big, fast, bumpy, and unpredictable. And also it was a initially set up by Bellevue. So when it started out, it was pretty smooth track, but over the years it got worse and worse and worse.
It just, yeah.
And coming off of turn 4, there was a hell of a bump, and it would throw you into the fence. And I can vouch for that because that's what happened to me when I raced there. When I was one of the few times I was leading a race, and I come off that turn, hit the bump, and straight into the fence. And then everybody just piled me into over the curb, which is a bloody great curb. And
that was high.
It was high, and I got a fair bit of damage. But I did enjoy racing there. I liked the racing there. Over the years, it probably the bumps probably reduced the car count because it got a little bit bad on going down the straights. You were kind of flying and going in all directions, and your body can only and your cars can only take so much. But you look at the place again, a big track, fast, and throw those bumps in, and anything can happen. Car spins, hits the curb, over it goes, and people remember that sort of action. That was what it's known for. That sort of action.
Yeah,
John Mander on top of the fence coming out of turn 4, Colin.
Yeah.
You know, to me, I loved Rochdale. I loved watching there as a kid. They used to just next to the pits where they came onto the track coming out of turn 4. There was the little hut that did the black peas, pie and peas. And they used to pull the shutter down between races because it got covered in shale. But it did get too rough really towards the end, but it was a great leveler. That was the other thing. It was a great leveler, but you did spend more time off the ground than you did on it. And the curbs on the inside were massive.
They got deeper over the years, didn't they?
Yeah. But I think it's a great choice. You know, I love Rochdale as a spectator, and you know, I only did one season in it as a driver. You know, my park is shut, so but I loved it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go on.
As a Crenshaw fan as well, he was dominant round there. One meeting I remember going to, my dad was looking for Cronshaw's garage to see if we can go and see the car, and we kind of found it about 6:30, and there's Doug's car sitting in the garage. He's kind of cleaning some spark plugs, and it's like a 12 or 14-year-old kid who was a Crenshaw fan. And I said, "Oh, Doug, you're not racing today?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm in heat 3." Anyway, so he goes to the meeting. Heat 1 comes up, he's not there. Heat 2 starts, he wasn't there. Halfway through heat 2, he turns up, he unloads, comes out for heat 3, wins the final. Yeah, that's
brilliant.
That's what's, and being a local track as well. He's 2 minutes down the road. Fantastic.
Yeah,
I wish I had one of them.
Yeah,
Wolfie snapped throttle linkage at the British drivers that they had there. When will it be? 87, something like that. And they had a real old clapped out recovery wagon, which nobody had welds at the track back then. So Cronshaw said to him, "Take it down my garage, weld it up, here's the keys," sort of thing. So off they go in this little thing. Anyway, on the way back, Lenny's looking, thinking, "God, I'm going to miss the consolation." So fires it up, pushes this recovery vehicle up the hill. Poor old boy sat in the front, hanging on for dear life.
Brilliant.
Because it was literally minutes away. It was dug from the place. But no, great memories and a brilliant track. You know.
I mean, for me, it was such a long way away, but it's one of those tracks I tended to read about more than go to. I did actually go though. I got to go to Rochdale when I was at college in Birmingham. I rode my motorbike up to Rochdale. I had to go to Rochdale. It was a great meeting as well. It was a big battle between Smithy and Wolfie. I think about 79 when Wolfie was in the Wayman cars and Frankie Wayman cars, and I think he got lapped by Smithy, and then after the flag went down for the finish, he piled Stuart straight into the fence after the finish, and Stuart managed to extract himself, and he powered around the track and then piled into him. Not wildly. It was more sort of like just slid into him because obviously Wolfie was parked in the wires, and he slid into him on the following lap. It was all for show, and the marshal came out to split them up and all this, but it was all done for show, I think. But it was great fun, and like I say, and Cronshaw around there. Doug Cronshaw was brilliant. One of my favourite drivers. Gordon Smith was always mega good around Rochdale. He was one of the experts around that track. And
well, you've got his favourite bit in there. You've got the bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the famous one where he went in, got put in there, going into turn 1, jumped out over the fence in the bar,
Straight
watched
to
the bar, having a pint.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it? Really, what a man, brilliant.
Yeah.
So I mean, Rochdale is a brilliant choice. I'm glad someone had that track in. I mean, it was in my, it would be in my top sort of 15, that's for sure, without any shadow of a doubt. But I had to.
Yeah.
It's difficult when you make these choices, isn't it? But yeah, brilliant choice that, Colin. So yeah, that's that one. So what's your
number 9 is
number 9?
Another of my local tracks, probably my most local regular track, and that's Haringey.
Oh, yeah.
It's an unusual choice. It was a big old place. The track was flat. You watch from a long way away. But for big world final meetings, when the place got packed, it had a fantastic atmosphere. And European championships when they have no European drivers coming over, so they have to borrow cars. But it was like my dad used to work on Saturdays, finish work at 5 o'clock. We'd go to my nan's in Hatfield, have some tea, and we'd still get to Haringey in time for the 7:45 start. I mean, imagine starting at 7:45 in the middle of London.
Oh no.
So you get in there, you couldn't really get much access to the pit. So the first time you saw the cars when they come down that ramp, and it was just a good atmosphere. And because it was local, I went there a lot. It used to run on the first part of the season in the early months. It had a summer break and then come back in sort of the end of the year. So it was racing under lights, always something special. And I did manage to race there myself. That's not me in that car there. That's Freetime Welters. You can see that car. But that was a European Championship when I think Ryan Rutchins come over and there's another guy come over. I thought they had two from Holland, and they were looking for more cars. And Keith Barber come up and said to us, "Would we loan the car out?" We said, "Yeah, if you can't get another one, I mean, my car's probably not the most suitable, but if you can't get another one, we will do." And I went out in the heat. I actually think I've got a place and actually qualified for the final, which is probably one of the first finals I ever qualified for. They couldn't find another car, so Freetime got in my car. Now, if you know me, I'm not the tallest of people. Freetime is typical Dutchman. He's quite tall. So they had to kind of shoehorn him into the car. His kind of knees were banging on the steering wheel. After about a lap or two, he got spun out and the car just got absolutely wrecked. Smashed to pieces. The engine come out, the radiator was out, the axles went out. And I think we've been promised like bookings at all Keith Barber's meetings, and I think it was co-run with Mike Parker, so we were given a promise of bookings at his tracks as well, and that's what we got. And we're talking in the bar, and Freetime come over to my dad and a roll of notes, stuffed them in my dad's pocket and said, "Yeah, this is for the car." My dad said, "Oh, I don't want it. Gave it back. Freetime stuffed it back in his pocket. Dad gave it back, and to and fro. Freetime got a little bit annoyed and said, "You'll keep it." And my dad went to the bank on the Monday, and obviously Gilders in those days, and it was about £400 worth of the orders.
My goodness,
that's
back then.
Yeah, then it was a lot of money. Just about paid for the damage to the car, I think.
Crikey.
But that's the World Finals there with good meetings, memorable meetings.
Yeah. Well, it's the first World Final I ever went to was Haringey, 1973, when Dave Chisholm won and Stuart came from the back to finish second. And it wasn't the first meeting I'd been to. We used to go Haringey a fair bit, actually. First meeting I ever went to was the Festival of the Speed at Brands Hatch, which is 1970, I think. But my first time I'd gone to a stock car stadium was Haringey. Went to one of the first meetings there the following year. And it's the first time I'd ever seen Stuart Smith. Stuart Smith came down to Haringey. Jim Esau was there. Willie Harrison was there as well. All sorts of guys from the north that you thought, blimey, this is just amazing. And it was a great thrill to see Stuart and Willie, racing at a southern track. It was just fantastic. So we Did you ever go into Haringey? Was it?
No, before my time again, really. I'm south,
Well,
obviously.
you're quite young, aren't you? Let's face it.
Yeah, that's it. I'm only a whippersnapper.
You are. So to me, anyway.
Yeah. The Coventry and Northampton were as far as we went back in the day, sort of thing. Yeah.
It's like same for me, but the other way around, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
it was a fantastic venue.
Yeah, plenty of meetings in each area, wasn't there? Haringey used to probably clash with meetings at probably Long Eaton, and I think at one time it clashed with two other tracks.
Really? Right. Yeah.
So, each area you didn't have to travel that far.
No.
So for me to go to the old Bellevue was a special event, and for people from the north coming to Haringey, it was a special event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that picture Neil's got up there, he's got Oggy on it, hasn't he? So he's obviously come down.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely right. Yeah, so that's your number 9. What's your number 8 then?
Number 8 is another not stock car track, but it's Cadwell Park.
Yes, Cadwell Park.
It's that's the place.
There you go. Oh, it's your brother there, I do believe.
Brother,
there is. Where is he? Can't see. There he is. There.
That's him. Yeah. Just before he landed in the trees on the top of the track. But it was. I think it was listed about 600 yards, but it was far bigger than that. Big straight uphill behind the trees, you couldn't see him, and they come hurtling down a steep kind of straight to a real sharp left-handed bend. It wasn't a stock car track, but it provided plenty of stock car action, because coming down that hill with them old drum brakes, like Chizzy there, your brakes faded. Your brakes faded, and there's a little bump as you come back onto from the link road to the proper circuit. Then there'd be a bank where you could go up the bank, flip over, roll over, and that's the bank there, and there'd be action all over the place. And it shouldn't provide action, but it did. I didn't have many meetings a year, probably 2 a year. The drivers liked it because it was something different, and I think the spectators liked it as well, because it's just something away from the norm, and it did provide a lot of action where really it shouldn't have done, but it did.
An old school Knock Hill, really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I could have put Knock Hill in and Lyddon and stuff like that, because they're all very similar. But they're the big old places. They shouldn't provide action, but they do. They're just, for some reason, people seem to just put the foot down and think, there's no wire fences or there's no steel plate fences here. Let's give it some. And it just does provide.
Become a cropper, though.
Become a cropper, like
exactly. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and there's those trees. My brother went up. You can see where the track goes to the left behind and up towards the hill behind the trees. I think my brother had chain link steering, and the chain come off, and he just went straight into the trees.
My God! I tell you what, though, it was the era for using road circuits. I mean, we used to do Brands Hatch. It's interesting. The first time I ever went to see stock cars, F1 stock cars, was in the Festival of Speed at Brands Hatch. There wasn't the clearways oval. It was used the other side of the track.
Oh, the Druid circuit.
Which was much different, and and it was a bit weird, but the clearways oval was fantastic. Saw some great races with Chizzy and Stewart battling over the wins there, and like I say, Linden Hill was a good place as well. So they tried, and Snetterton as well was another one. They tried all these, didn't they? I
mean, look at that picture there. You got Les Suckling from London. You got Bill Blundell from Southport, Macclesfield. And drives from all over went to race at these sort of places, like they did at Brands Hatch, because it was something different. And
absolutely,
it was different for the spectators, and you need a little bit of variety. And it's a shame we haven't got places like this. For a one-off, once they don't have to go there every week, but once a year to somewhere like this does kind of spice up the season, I think.
Yeah, I think so. No, that's a fair point. Fair point. So, right, okay, so that's your number 8. What's your number 7?
Well, number 7, back up north to Nelson.
He's your favourite man.
What a track! It was an action track, but it brought a lot of people into the sport. At the time it opened, you probably only had Bellevue running and maybe Aycliffe. And when Nelson come onto the scene, I think the sport exploded in the north. It brought a lot of people in, and a lot of those people are still involved in the sport. It was a hotbed of racing, and there's people are still from that area still going racing. It was a small old track. It was as bumpy as hell. The pits were on the other side of the road, so again, the spectators were really close, especially down the back straight. And that's the only reason I ever went to Nelson, was to drive across the road.
So it was unique in itself, wasn't it? You know, because like you say, you parked in the across the road, and you had to drive the car across the proper road to get to the track itself. Amazing.
I think a lot of people, like the back straight was so close to the track. I think at one point they stopped people being there because it was so close.
Yeah, because just that wall, wasn't it, down the back?
That,
you stood there, and behind you was I haven't got a picture of that. I've got one somewhere, but I can't see. I haven't got it on here, I don't think. But yeah,
in fact,
and is that famous over here, that famous I don't know what that place was, with this old building.
I think it used to be the changing rooms for the football club.
Was it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because obviously it was a football club first. Then it went to a speedway circuit after that, didn't it? It was Parker put speedway there because he was involved with Newcastle originally, wasn't he? I think as a speedway promoter. I can't remember what the new Nelson team were called. Nelson. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, they tried it, and then of course all the stock cars just came alive, and it was one of the hotbeds of racing. It was, like for me down south, you read your Stock Car Supporter magazine or Stock Car Monthly and Stock Car magazine, and I just read about all these things that were going on at Nelson, and all the incredible racing between, again, the same guys, Doug Cronshaw
and the Smithy were unbeatable around there.
Yeah, and Gordon Smith was good as well. He was another good one around there. So they were, Cronshaw was another. He was just electric around that place, and it's just a special place.
There's a lot of action. I mean, I did actually race at the last ever meeting there.
Did you?
And I actually qualified for the final, which in my unglamorous racing career, qualifying for the final at Nelson was one of the highlights of my career.
Must have been.
But I was in the consolation, and that building there, just in front of it, there was a massive pile up. No. It must have been like half the field, and I was in it for about 10 laps, and I was backwards and forwards trying to get out, and I got out for about 4 laps. The track was completely blocked, so you had to go across the curb. About 8 cars finished, and I finished 8th or whatever and got into the final. But because I went over the curb so much, it punched a hole in the sump, so I didn't actually get to race in the final. But I qualified for it, so I'm quite chuffed with that. But that was, again, the unpredictable sort of nature of the track. That Smith and Cronshaw done well, but you might have heard people. I think Rob Bradsell might have won a final there when he was a kind of yellow top. Every now and again, it would throw out an unusual driver to win, because you could be winning, doing half a lap ahead of everybody else, hit one of them bumps, hit the fence, and that was your race over.
Absolutely. Do you remember it much, Ian? Did you go to?
I spectated there. The main thing I remember is being cramped up in the grandstand, because it was just all benches. It wasn't fancy seats or anything. You were just all on a bench, and the steward at the end's going, "Go on, everybody, move up. We can get more in." Just kept packing everybody in. But like Colin said, what a sort of spawning ground for drivers, the Waymans, the Lunds, the Beresford, all these people that sort of started their careers there. I think it had a massive impact on the sport. Definitely.
That's that guy in the photo in the yellow top with the red car, Glenn Wolfenden.
Yeah.
Would the sport have had him had Nelson not opened?
No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely right, mate. Absolutely right. Yeah, so that's fantastic. I think that final that you didn't get into, the last one, I think John Hillen won the last final. I got a feeling that night, from what I recall, but I wasn't there, but I think he did.
I was sulking in the coach at the time.
Oh no! Oh dear!
No, I thought I probably went to watch it because it's more fun watching than it was racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Mega place, absolute. Yeah, a legendary track. So, all right, what's your number 6?
Number 6. My number 6 is Leicester.
Another good one. You come up with some belters. You really have come up with some good ones.
Well, Leicester was just an all-action track.
Yeah.
Coventry with action, as it was known at the time. Probably because I had a more mix of lower graders, but the fence there was wicked and used to rip axles out like there was no tomorrow. It didn't. You could have 2 or 3 a meeting where the axles were ripped out, cars bouncing off, rolling over. It was just. I mean, it didn't open for very long. I don't think. I mean, it opened in about the mid-70s. Of course, there was that incident.
Had to put that back in. Had to put that back in.
But whatever meeting you went to, and there was always a clashing meeting, so it didn't always have the big stars there, but it had plenty of action, plenty of rollovers and fence bashing. The fence there seemed to attract you more than anywhere else, and that's one thing I remember about it. Just every time you went, somebody would hit the fence, bang, axle out. Nowadays, they'd hit the fence just as hard or probably harder, but bounce off a steel plate, and the actual visual image wouldn't be there. But with Leicester, it was a lot of visual action.
Yeah, I remember it as well. I used to write again from the stories you used to read from the magazines. It coaxed me to literally. I used to ride my little motorbike away from Surrey up to Leicester and back in a day to go and watch racing, because I was so keen to go and watch this track that I've been hearing about, and it didn't disappoint. It was phenomenal. And then when I went to college, I used to go over there. It wasn't so far from Birmingham to go to Leicester, so I used to go on a Saturday night. Absolutely brilliant. What a great venue. And like you say, just another. I know Dean Wood. It's called Northampton, the action track, which it hopefully will be this coming year. But compared to what this lot were like, these venues were just unbelievable. They would just bring up the most extraordinary incidents and pile-ups and rollovers and you name it. Everything would happen at these places, and Leicester was definitely one of those. What about you, Ian? Did you go to Leicester?
I raced there, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Good man. That's what I want to hear.
Well, basically, I think at that time we were travelling with old man Frank, and I think he'd had a bus stuck with Mike Parker, because I think quite often
didn't everyone?
So we ended up going down there. I think I only raced there once, and it was actually in one of Frank's cars, because mine was totaled by that time of the year. But I do remember Nick Noden coming out of what would have been turn 2, caught the fence. He did a barrel roll, landed on the infield, and his back axle then landed on top of his bonnet. Just phenomenal. I don't really remember much about it, apart from I ended up through the fence. So he knew. Yeah.
No, it was a wonderful place. I mean, it's a good list you've got there, Colin. You've got to follow that now, Ian, with your 10 down to 6 and see what.
Well, no surprise. A few of mine will be a little bit more northern based.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. At number 10, I've got the old Scunthorpe.
Goodness.
That obviously opened by Harry Stewart and Stewart. Just some almost a Rochdale in a way. Quite tight corners.
Bumpy.
Yeah, very bumpy. Long straights, tight corners. Just again, you were very close to the fence. It was a dump, but it just had an atmosphere. It just had a fantastic atmosphere. And it was 30 minutes from my house. So.
Always helps. Yeah, I just go to Scunthorpe a lot again for the same reasons you just mentioned. I just enjoyed it because great atmosphere. Went to the British there. I think Lundy won the British at Scunthorpe. I think one year. So,
had quite a bit of success around there. Again, it was a great leveler, but I remember myself, Pete Fold, and a few others did a TV promotion for it, for calendar or something like that, and we were out there going round whatever. And even in practice, I managed to stick it in the fence backwards. So, you know, but no, I love Scunny. Just, you know, don't get me wrong, you were there on horrible, cold, wet, miserable nights, and you couldn't tell whose car was what. And, oh, terrible. But it just had an atmosphere about it. And the bar that they had up on the top there that Stuart put in there, brilliant.
No surprise there, really.
No, and I won eating final there in Andrew Smith's Hot Stock, so
Excellent.
it bears a good memory for me. I loved it.
Yeah, it was good. What about you, Colin? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. It's again one of those sort of places where the atmosphere about it and the unpredictability. It's just, those sort of tracks just had something going for them where you could go along and like the drivers would be going out there and no two laps would be the same because you might hit a bump differently, and so you're racing the track as well as other people, and that's, I think that was the essence of stock car racing back then. You know, look at the barrels there. Just you get slightly off the line, you hit a barrel, over you go, and so. And it might not be your fault. You might hit a bump. Another car in front of you might hit a bump and push you into it, and that sort of thing. That was what stock car racing was about back in those days.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Right, that's your number 10. What's your number 9?
My number 9 might be a bit controversial. The old Bellevue. The reason it's not higher up, one of the main reasons, believe it or not. As a kid, I used to go all the time. Could never get in the pits. You know, the guy that they had on the gate there, he was a beast. Could never get in the pits. I remember Willie Harrison once walked me in, and it was like the best night of my life as a kid. You know, but I struggled there whenever I raced there. I mean, one night. We were there. Bammy was on holiday, and Alan Barker was running the meeting. And in the Grand, I'd had a terrible night as usual. And then in the Grand National, I ended up with the car wrapped all in the fence and a right mess. And it was when Frank was looking after us. And Frank's, you know, he's had a pretty bad night as well. And we go marching onto the track to try and get this car out the fence. And Barker's there just saying, just get the still saw, cut the bumper off. And Frank's going, you know. Them two started having a row, so then Alan Barker just switched the lights off. So we're there in pitch black trying to get the bloody car out the fence. So that, you know, the atmosphere was brilliant. You know, I know it. You know, there was the crowds and that, but just for personal reasons, it's not as high up as it possibly could be on other people's.
But it is on. Well, I think it'll feature later. Almost certainly in this discussion, but yeah, I totally appreciate what you're saying. I don't think when I went to Bellevue, I don't think I ever went to the pits either. So, but yeah, I just loved the place. I mean, it was just another place for atmosphere and speed and spectacle and memorable moments. Something you'll never forget.
Yeah, I had a really big crash there.
That's memorable.
Yeah. My car had been wrecked, so I was borrowing one of Frank's, and it was the first time I'd ever gone well at Bellevue. And I remember plain as day going down the back straight, and there was there was Richard Dobson and another quick yellow top in front of me, and all I was intent on was their back bumpers because it's the first time I've got the car going properly. We get into turn 3, those two, one went left, one went right. Keith David was just sat there and I hit him flat out. And the engine shot out of Frank's car. The gearbox disappeared. I smashed all my shins on the roll cage. And so just, you know, just bad memories.
But when you talk about flat out, Bellevue was a flat out track. You hardly lifted, and so you must have been going some speed. You know,
I think that's why I struggled, to be honest, Colin, to start with, because I wasn't good enough or confident enough to go fast. So I was lifting, and top boys just picked you up and dumped you. You know, and that was it. Yeah, I didn't have the skill or the bottle at that time to go flat out.
Don't
And the
know,
time I
but-
did, I crashed.
Yeah, I mean, sitting in the grandstands as well, because as a kid, when you weren't allowed in the pits, so you never got to go in the pits. But sitting in the grandstand above where the cars come out was just, and who's going to come out next? It was that added to the
Excitement.
anticipation, the excitement to me. There,
Stuart's
I agree with that.
testimonial. When Stuart came out at the end for his testimonial race, and he came flying onto the track, and he just erupted as he came flying out with the out the tunnel. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's good place. Yeah,
brilliant. Right, okay, number 8.
Number 8 is Northampton tarmac, I might add.
Yeah. Small print. Yeah,
in the fine print. I've watched the F1's race there. I think the weather has played a major part in it of late. But I think there was some great racing back in the day. The semi-finals when Cronny came out and won his semi, and there was Percy and all that lot there. I don't think there was anything better, or maybe Hendersford was, but on a nice sunny afternoon, laying on that grass banking, watching Formula One stock cars, with a tinny in your hand, I think that sums up stock cars in a way.
It is.
But,
yeah.
Even when they arm code it and everything, I still felt it. The Paul Harrison's World Final. What a cracking weekend that was.
Yeah, it was a good race too. I was so pleased he won that day.
Yeah, I just hope that the weather's kind to them this year with having the World Final there. I really do hope it's kind to them, but at the minute it hasn't proved itself to me as a shale track. Admittedly, I've never raced on it, so I can't say from a driver's point of view, but from a spectator's point of view, the times I've seen the ones there, they haven't really floated me boat. But it'll get there. You got to take your hat off to Dean. He's bought the place, he's investing in it, so at least his future of it's secure. But I just think it was a cracking track. Yeah, it still is.
Yeah, I think it's one of the first tracks I ever went to when back in the mid-60s when my dad took me for my 5th birthday treat, and we got hooked on the sport from then. But it has provided some fantastic racing over the years. As far as the shell goes, I actually, when he gets it right, it's a bloody good track. And it's a little bit weather dependent, like you say, but I've seen the racing has been pretty darn good when I've seen it. So I'm hoping, like you say, fingers crossed, we get some decent weather. You're going to get a lot of Dutch people coming over. You're going to get guys from New Zealand coming back. I think it's going to be a cracking weekend. But like I say, when it was tarmac, it's a shame you couldn't have 2 tracks there. You couldn't have a tarmac and a shell track and race on them both, side by side, because the tarmac racing was good and it was action packed.
Yeah,
and I think the racing got harder as when the steel plate fence was put in, because before that fence was a bit wicked. It could take your axle out in a heartbeat. So the drivers were a little bit more reserved hitting each other. You could hit somebody and you didn't want to follow yourself in. Now with the steel plates, you can follow them in and bounce off them. So the hits and that are harder. So as Danny Wayman can testify in that picture.
As I was looking, interesting. I think particularly on tarmac. I mean, I did see another incident I nearly put up, which was it must have been in one of the shootout rounds when Dan Johnson ended up perched on top of Lee Fairhurst and a few others. They went in at a heck of a pace, and they were like skittles being knocked about once before they ended up resting on top of the fence. Such a hard hit. And obviously another one was I remember was obviously when Tom put Dan in the fence as a retaliation that time, which I went on the front cover of one of my books. I've got fond memories of Northampton. It was one of the first tracks I ever went to too. 1974, I think I went there the first time. and yeah, just some great memories there, and also raced there as well. Briefly,
Well,
had one,
yeah.
had one experience in a Formula One round there, which I toodled round at the back. I mean, it's ridiculous, really. In your hire car, Ian.
Yeah.
How anybody allowed me to do that, I don't know, because it was bloody mental, really. I mean, 5 laps. I'd never. It was there before at that point. I'd never raced anything ever before, and I got 5 laps out on track as a. You get those, don't you, before you go out on for a heat. And I went out. I remember when I went out on the track. I didn't know what I was doing, and I sort of like, okay, I'll start at the front before they do me 5 laps. And I looked across, and there was Frankie Wayman Jr. right next to me. And he sort of winked at me when, oh God, here we go. And he just powered off and charged past me. About 20 seconds later, I was only still doing my first lap before he lapped me again. And it was just, but it was amazing. It was just, but then I got to actually race, and then I did Rebels, with you, Ian, as well, and that I got a little bit better and more confident doing those. I enjoyed racing Rebels around there, and actually felt quite competitive on some occasions for once. But no, I've got fond memories of Northampton as a tarmac track. But I agree with everyone what they say about for Shell this year. I think Dean, having spoken to him about it, he's got big plans for the place. He's fantastic. He's managed to buy it off the Haynes family, and he got it all done in double quick time, and he's done a great job in securing its future, which is something that we're in a good position with a lot of our venues now. We've got secure futures for a lot of them, and Northampton in particular. And he's going to redo the place. He almost going to start from scratch almost. He's going to. I've seen that he told me, explained his plans. I mean, the start of the control booth's going to be on the other side of the track. He's going to level off the banking to make it more so people can see better. He's got all sorts of. He's got the grandstand he's going to be putting in. He's going to be putting. He's going to have like a VIP section. He's now an area for the press, particularly for the World Final, which I think is I think it's like a eureka moment for stock car racing, because it's something that they've never really done before. And I keep going on and on and on about it, that they should encourage the media to come to stock car events, and he wants to do that. He wants the press to come. So we're going to try and sort that out and see if we can get some. It's something that. Well,
Tom Haynes was quite forward thinking when he actually ran it. I mean, I used to run the Dream driving school and the 2-seaters down there. With Tom's help and that, it was John Haynes and Tom. Yeah. Tom Bissett, wasn't it, before? Yeah. But John Haynes was superb with us.
Oh, he was a wonderful man. Dream. Yeah, he was a wonderful man.
But some of the memories before it was arm code, etc. Phil Haig going through the fence, down in turn 3, and then the famous John Lund repaying Richard Pratt.
Absolutely.
Just classic stuff, really. Just a good solid track for the sport, I think.
Absolutely. The bedrock of it is it. Yeah, it's the backbone. It is the backbone of the sport, and long may it continue to be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's your number 8. What's your number 7?
That was that my number 8.
Oh,
sorry. Right.
Go on. We've got a long way to go yet.
The next one on my list is Stoke.
Stoke. There we go.
Yeah.
Now this is amazing.
Not everybody's cup of tea.
No, I'll say this before you explain this. When we were having our discussions prior to what we were going to do with our next top 10, and I said, we do top 10 tracks, and I said, well, and we were talking about, I'm sure Bellevue and various venues would come onto the list, and I said, well, I nearly wrote, well, at least we won't get Stoke on there anyway. I don't imagine Stoke. I don't imagine Stoke could be on there. And lo and behold, number 7 on Ian Higgins' list is Stoke.
Yeah,
do tell.
Obviously, I raced there when Stuart was promoter. When he opened it up, when they lost Scunthorpe, and that was the replacement basically. Raced there, loved the place. when you actually looked at it, you know, they moan about facilities, etc., but it had a bar, it had a grandstand, you know. I've just seen some brilliant racing there, and again, going back to how Colin was saying earlier, the unpredictability of it, and then obviously my dad Tim Mann and that got involved with it, and did a year at it and blew the brains out, and you know, sold it to Dave Pearce. But even then, when we were running it, you know, just stupid things like my mum had always complained about the ladies' toilets at the tracks. So we went down there. She spent hours painting out all the ladies' toilets, new seats, mirrors, everything, even false plastic flowers in there, everything. End of the first Formula One meeting, every seat was ripped off, feces wiped down the wall, and this is in the ladies, not the gents. The flowers shoved down the toilet, you know, but that's why, you know, Hazel, everybody used to moan about the toilets at Skeggy, and Hazel said, we've done it, and people just come and wreck them. You know,
what is it about the toilets that people want to wreck the loo? I never understood.
It's a
fascination with it.
It is disappointing. It's disappointing and disheartening, isn't it? You're putting all that effort into it, and then you want to make the place better, and then something like that happens, and you think, why should I bother?
Why bother? Absolutely. But the problem was for us, we didn't own it, and therefore you can't keep going and investing in it. Then obviously, eventually, it got round to Steve Reese running it, and they didn't do many F1 meetings there, but domestic-wise, it was brilliant, you know. And I just think, again, I think it encouraged quite a few drivers to race from that area. Not so much in the F1s, but in other formulas, you know, Stoke area. And it was rough, it was ready, but there was some action. It was an action track, and that's why it's sort of up there on my list.
Yeah,
that's fair enough.
Yeah, it's a good old action track. It's it had a checkered history all through the years, though, didn't it? I don't think it ever attracted the crowd it should have done.
No.
For some reason, I don't know why it was. Even when Mike Parker first opened it, there was never really that big a crowd. I think that's probably the first year he opened it. Good to see Mike close in the West Ham colours there.
That's right. Sure weren't the Burnley colours. I'm sure it might have
maybe. But I think after this, I think they put a greyhound track in the middle, and then they had a wire fence on the inside and the outside.
That's right. They did. That's right.
And that was absolutely carnage.
70s, 70.
Yeah, absolutely carnage.
Yeah.
And the next time I went, the greyhound track was on the outside, so maybe they made the track a bit smaller. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there was well, you couldn't tell particularly at the pit what ended up being the pits end, but at the other end, it was very flat at the bottom, and that's where the old track used to extend all the way down there. So they actually shortened it by quite a lot, and then put the greyhound track around the outside. It was just, there was some great racing there.
There was a lot of action there. A lot of action.
Yeah. It had different guises. It had different transformations. But I mean, like this, I would say this is 73, 74. This particular picture, I think. Like I say, it came and went, and it sort of had more come back to Lazarus. Really, it didn't. and it you know, it looked like it was always going to be there, but then it suddenly wasn't. Was it? Suddenly disappeared. Just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I went there, it was in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden, everything crept up to it. And I suppose it was on the cards, but especially with the houses kind of on the other side, just kind of creeping up. But
it was on the cards when we were there. You know, I mean, that was the thing, that the leases were always short on it, because you just knew that it could go any minute. And I think when it did actually go, you look at how quickly it happened. But I think not so much for the F1 side, because they only did a couple of meetings, but for domestic formulas, I think it really is a miss, definitely. The Stanwoods banger meeting there was probably one of the biggest banger meetings in the UK. It was absolutely heaving, you know. So, another one gone.
Yeah, it's just a shame. Absolutely. Just a shame that we don't have replacements. I was I've been looking at my cousin lives in Australia, lives in Sydney, and they had a track at Parramatta. It got closed down, but the council built them another track. And
Yeah.
that's
If
never
only.
happened here. That's never happened
No.
here. When a track closes,
never
that's
happened.
it. There's never
Yeah.
another alternative looked at, and that's disappointing. But we've got grown used to it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. But there was always the famous thing with Stoke, though, because like time stands still at the place. Like you say, you used to have a bar, but you could put what's the famous line? You could put your pint on the bar of one meeting, it'll still be there when you come back for the next one or something. It was always like that, really, wasn't it? But it was another one of those action tracks, like you say. Yeah, spit and sawdust, really. But it serves its purpose, and it's just a real shame, really. I mean, it was a bit of a shock, I think, when it suddenly closed its doors. We weren't expecting it, were we? But yeah, I mean, you don't know what you're missing until it's gone, and unfortunately, it's no longer here and never will be again. So that is number 7.
Yeah. So my number 6. Yeah. Up north, it's grim up north, Aycliffe.
Aycliffe.
Yeah. You
Way
know,
up north. Way up
north. As Colin can vouch.
Very, very way up north for me. That's for sure.
I must have a thing about bumpy tracks, I think. But that's about the top and bottom of it. Thank you very much. It was action again. You know, that suspended rope that it had. You could quite often miss the fence post, but you watch videos of it from back in the day. And those cars we used to lollop round there, and you know it weren't smooth by any stretch of the imagination.
Another bouncy one. You like your bouncy tracks, yeah.
You know, and like Colin's reminisced before about when Chizzy and that went up there, and they're all going, "We ain't having a Southerner winning." Well, we were all like that when That's how I became friends with Andy Webb in a way. My first semi-final, he travelled all the way up there, and it's like, nah, you're not having this, mate. We're not having you Southerners coming up here. And it very much was like that. And then the other thing was that Jim Wilkie used to keep the bar open until God knows what time on an evening. So, yeah, just brilliant atmosphere. And obviously, when we were involved with the Waymans, that was where we ended up going rather than down to Northampton's that clashed, etc. So a lot of fond memories. Again, back straight, you were stood right there. You know, you were right in it. And then turn 3 and 4, you know, you look at that sequence of pictures of John Dowson and Gerald Taylor. Going
that's a great picture.
You
I
know.
should have got that.
Again, just old. I suppose for me, it's all a bit old school stock cars, not super fast, because you couldn't. You know, don't get me wrong, drivers were fast, the Ainsworths and old man Frank Lundy, Stotty there, you know. Yeah. But I just love the place. And I did the last ever meeting there, and I was gutted when it shut, to be honest. A big miss.
I was too, because it was one of those venues I've never been to because it just really was too far from me. I mean, it would take you 6 hours to get there, Colin. It would take me God knows how long from Surrey to Aycliffe and back again. So I wish you'd have gone there. I'd love to have gone to Aycliffe.
Yeah, looking at that picture there, it's been a long way. The guy in the Wayman car, that's Tim Warwick.
Is it? Tim Warwick? I didn't realise that. Yeah. There is. He spun out Tim. Bless him. The
amazing Mr. Warwick, as he put on the car. Yeah. And he chose to go to Aycliffe because he didn't want any of his friends to know about it racing at Brayfield. So he thought, I'll go to Aycliffe, and if I make a mess of it, no one will know. Everybody kind of twigged that he was going to do it, and we all turned up there. And he goes, "Oh, bloody hell, what are you all doing here?"
He's fantastic. What a man he was. Yeah, what a man. And so, and Gerald Taylor there as well.
Yeah, Gerald.
Rob Bradsell was a red top.
Rob Bradsell in the Chizzy car. So I'll get out of the way if I can. Go the other way. There we go. Yeah, and
Alex McDade in the background, 29.
Oh, yeah. That's not you.
Is that the old Smithy car, or what one was that?
I think that's the one after, possibly. I don't think that was the Dodo. I'm not sure.
No.
But it's definitely Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so, I mean, some legendary stories from Aycliffe. I mean, they've got people like Russell Taylor, when he did the F1s, he was always a hard man up there, having battles with John Lund, cutting across the track to get him and all sorts of things. I think Peter got involved. Peter Folding got a few scraps as well. Yeah,
The
brilliant.
best one
place.
ever was Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby Burns and Old Man Wayman had a do.
Yeah.
And Bobby put Frank in, reversed off, rammed him, Next thing, old Fred's come flying across in the old tractor with his red cap on, rams Bobby. So they call Burns up to race control. So Bobby Burns goes up there, and the DJ up there at the time, Richie Monkhouse, Madcap Monkhouse, he was a nutter. And they call Burns up and they go, right, Bob, you know, you can't do that. You can't be ramming cars. We're going to have to fine you. He says, all right. They went, yeah, we're going to have to fine you 10. And he went, right, here's 20 because I'm doing the same again in the next effing race.
Oh, magnificent.
Yeah.
Talking about big hits, I think Stuart Smith put Wolfie in the wires there when Wolfen was racing. He's a blue top at the time in his first car, and the car went on its side and caught fire. But the first person to try and get it out was Stuart. That was the start of the rivalry, I think, between those two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, lads. That's top 10 to 6 for part 1 of the Talking Stox top 10 tracks of all time. So yeah, thank you to Colin and Ian for joining me on that, and we'll see you again for part 2, which will be our top 5 to our number 1 track of all time. So join us to see us for that. Bye for now.